Okay, so I'm going to go over today how I go about lighting, getting the Vermont castings. This is a Vermont castings Resolute Acclaim. I'm going to go over how I load the stove and how I get it lit first try every time. I'm going to show you. I've been burning this stove for, I don't know, probably 12 years. We live in a small cabin, probably around 1,200 square foot cabin. And this is our primary heat source. So the first thing I'm going to do here is make sure that my damper on the side is open, which it is. Next I'm of course going to check the airflow lever on the bottom here. Make sure it's all the way to the right. It has a stopper, and you just push it down and over a little bit farther, and it'll open all the way up to the light position. Next, I'm going to get some newspaper, some things ready to go. I've got my fresh wood ready to go. So next thing I want to do is open the stove up. I've already cleaned out the ash from last fire. We normally would light this, and this stove will run for weeks at a time without stopping. It's been warm here, so we're just getting it going again. First thing I put in the stove is just going to be some paper. I'm going to just toss some paper in the bottom like this. No particular order, just tossing it in. In between my burns, I like to clean the stovepipe off. I like to wipe off the edges of the stove. Like I said, this stove's about 12 or 13 years old. I get everything cleaned off and ready to roll. That way, ready to go. We don't stop the stove very frequently. We keep it burning 24 hours a day. You know, sometimes for 2-3 weeks at a time without ever stopping. So I try to get it fairly clean and nice before I start it again. Next, I'm going to just take some boxes, whatever kind of boxes I get around the house, kind of rip them up a little bit, stick them in there. So I'm just going to continue to fill this thing up with cardboard boxes. I put them in there loosely, but I want to fill it pretty completely with cardboard boxes. And this might seem like overkill, but trust me, it's important to get a lot burning when you first start it if you want to get it done on your first try. So I'm just going to get the cardboard boxes in there. I'll step them in a little bit, push on them down in there. After I get this loaded up with cardboard boxes, I'm going to check to make sure I have everything away from the door. I want to try to keep everything off of the door. That way it doesn't burn directly in the door. I'm going to try to keep everything out of the little exhaust tip at the top of the stovepipe. The chimney. Next thing I want to do is just get some scrap. Either use regular natural sticks, limbs and sticks, or I can use something like this. This is just scrap lumber. So now on this, I find that it is sort of important. You want this to put these in at different angles. That way, as your cardboard burns, they do not end up laying flat on the bottom. Next thing I want to do is take maybe one small log and throw in here. something to catch like that. Now this part is important for getting the draft going. If you don't do this part, then I find you might get smoke inside the house. You get more smoke coming out. So I take some newspaper and put it right back towards the stovepipe hole. Right back towards the stovepipe hole. Not so much towards the front, but on the top. After you've got all your wood in and all your cardboard packed, put a little bit of newspaper or something that burns very easily. Tissue paper, newspaper, wrapping paper, something that burns quick and easily. Put it back towards the front or towards the back of the unit, towards the stove pipe hole. Then lastly, I find this is a nice little trick, is take a piece of cardboard about the size of the stove roughly, bend it in there, jam it down in, and I create a little chute like this on the top, so that when I first start the stove, the smoke wants to follow inside of that and go straight up the stovepipe instead of around this gasket. If you don't get a very good draft right away because there might be wind outside, or maybe the temperature between the inside temperature and the outside temperature isn't enough to create an upflow right away, this little trick here will help the smoke go up the pipe and not into your house as you're doing this. So then we're pretty much ready to light the stove. So I like to, you can use a match, or lighter or whatever. I like this little guy here. So I carefully open it, make sure nothing's going to fall out. Tuck everything back in there good. Looks okay. Turn on my little lighter. And then I usually light kind of deep in there. 1 or 2 spots. As soon as I get something going, I want to shut this door right away. Now the key to doing this is to get a lot of airflow going, and you want to get the flame going very quickly and get the stove from 0 to hot really quick. Now after you get the fire roaring pretty well, if you had any smoke seepage coming out, that should stop and you should get a draft going. Then what you want to do is watch your thermostat on the top of the griddle, and you can start to hear as you get the draft, the smoke going up the pipe. You want to watch until your thermostat gets up to around the 200 to 300 mark, right in there. When it gets up to that point, you'll be about ready to add one more log on the top. Now the temperature's up to 350 degrees. I'm going to put a couple other dry logs in. So again, I want to make sure I put them in an angle so they don't sit flat on the bed. Just want to put a few medium-sized ones in. I want to make sure I leave plenty of airflow space. Then I'll leave the damper open until I get an ash bed of about 3 logs burning on there. With this stove, it has a catalyst, so you don't want to, you have to get the catalyst in the back of the stove hot up to about 400 degrees and sustain that for a while. So the way I do that is after I get these set of logs burning, I'll start to alternate shutting the dampener on the side for about 30 minutes, and then I'll open it to get the stove hot, and then I'll shut it again until the stove will maintain about a 300 to 400 degree burn. You don't usually want to burn it over about 600 degrees. And then once you get to your 300 or 400 degree burn, you can adjust this dampener down this way to the lower section, or usually I run it pretty much in the middle most of the time, and that keeps us right around 400, 450 degrees regular burn.